Now you can see here, what are these marks then? There's a yellow mark and there's an orange mark and an orange mark and there's a gray mark. Well, these orange marks represent the break-even level. So you can see here that the green level right at the y-axis at this specific area is breaking even the option. What's break even? If you guys remember, break even means that whatever you bought the option at a certain price, the price that you sold it will be at the same price that you bought it. It means that that you didn't lose money, but you didn't win any money either. That's what a break even means. Now in purple lines, they also have break evens. Remember the reason why the purple line, you can see that it's a bit left. Well, that's because the purple line has extrinsic value. That's a good thing because it shows that your price actually doesn't have to go above in order to break even. It just has to stay at the same price and go up and make a gain. Why? Because there's still value. There's other value left in the option right now if you have time left until the expiration. And this gray line represents the current share price it's in of the profit and loss of the purple line. So let's say right now it's not exactly at $301, but maybe it's at $300.80 or something like that. Then this gray line would represent that exact share price. So maybe in here you would be losing probably I don't know, $2 or something to your option. That's what an option is. So I'm pretty sure you guys understand that now. That a call option, to understand, is a call option is always going to be this. So you can see here that regardless if you left it at expiration, which is really the worst thing, in the worst case, which could give you the max loss, is going to be what you paid for the option or the buying power if you're using collateral or margin. In this case, because we're just doing calls and single calls and puts, you're going to pay the premium, which is $200. You're going to lose a premium. Where's that premium going to go to? To the seller. So the limited risk of $100, even if the stock drops to $0. That's the good thing about options. And the great thing about it too is that you can have an unlimited gain. Like this could be to 7,000 to 12,000 to 20,000. Like that stock could go up to the moon. You would still be making money. There's no limited cap of how much you can make. It's unlimited. However, it has to, it's unlimited even at the expiration because you would have intrinsic, like the stock itself. If the stock moves up by 10%, 30%, 40% or more. So let's talk more about this. The purple line again is the profit and loss for today or the day you have chosen. The green line is the profit and loss at the expiration date of the option, remember? So the prices at the y-axis is the different share prices the stock can go. Remember? That's so if your stock, this is going to be your breaking level. If the P&L graph from the share price goes up, well, your P&L is going to be at a profit. It's going to be gaining in the option. That's for calls. The x-axis is the amount of money your option can gain or lose wherever the share prices move. So you can see here that if your spot price was 310 and it went down to 300, well, obviously your option would lose. If the share price is at $315 but you bought it at 310, well, you won $5 of that difference if it's in the money, or you just made a gain in the option. Now, the purple line will always be above the green line because you have the extrinsic value left as long as you're not at expiration date. Remember what I told you? That's why you see the P&L graph, the purple P&L or the P&L of today or the day that you're looking, that's before the expiration, because sometimes people have it as a different color. I have it as purple, but if the purple line of the P&L is always going to be above the expiration date P&L, because there's extrinsic value left and a part with intrinsic, but there's more extrinsic. So there's more value compared to expiration, which means that remember that when the lines are above, it shows that when the lines are more above, the purple line is always going to have more of a gain in profits compared to the green line. Always. Why? Because it has extrinsic value. And that means that if the price went up by $1, the price today would be worth more than compared to if the price on expiration moved up by $1 by the same share price. In fact, it might even end up losing. It won't be enough because it only has intrinsic value. As you see here, the green line only has intrinsic value left in the option as there isn't any extrinsic left. Now, the y-axis is when the current share price is higher than you bought the call. Then you bought the call of your P&L line on the current share price will be high on one of the dollar signs above the broken even level. The gray dash on purple or P&L date will be the current share price right now. So if the price is at $302.30, then you will see the gray dash be exactly on the $303.30 number on x-axis, and since they represent as the share price, so it would be like right here, right? And then the dash line would be right here. These represents the share price. Now, finally, What are the calls? I mean, what are the pros and cons of call options? So the pros of calls is no matter how bad the stock went against your trade, you only lose the premium you had to pay, which is limited risk. You can also take advantage of a call to gain double in a little share price movement to make 100% ROI or even more than that. Because of this, you can make an unlimited return of your investment, no matter how far the stock went, how far the stock went up, making 10x, 20x of your option contract. And because of this too, is that your cost is very little compared to owning the shares, and it values much faster than the stock itself, to the point where if you bought 100 shares of stock selling at $100, you would need to buy or have a buying power of $10,000. Rather than with single calls, you would just need to pay $100 on buying power, and you don't have to worry that if the stock fell by 4% or by 5%. With stocks, you will lose $400 or $500 because it's $10,000 of 100 shares. With options, you just lose $100 regardless how far prices go against your trade. Those are the good things about buying call options. Now let's talk about the cons, the disadvantages. So because of how options are made up of fundamentally on value, they can be risky buying them. Where if you trade a expiration date for 3 weeks and the trade went up by not that much for 3 weeks and was just able to hit your strike price, you will lose all the contract value because the time value really went against you in the trade, that the stock couldn't overpass the strike before the expiration or move closer to the strike in a faster time for a few days before the expiration. The other thing is that in calls, you need the stock to go up sharply to make a profit. You also need to go up before a specific date to maintain time value, which is called theta. It's a Greek terminology in order to represent time value. It's called theta. And that the volatility doesn't go against you depending how much volatility there was when you bought it, which makes the option expensive or cheap. And the last thing is that you have to also pay fees and commissions per buy and sell of a contract you do, which varies by broker. But it usually is with well-trusted brokers at 66 cents per order. So if you buy and sell a contract, because remember it's per order, it doesn't mean that your buy and sell is in total 66 cents. It just means that if you buy or sell, it's going to cost you always to execute those orders at 66 cents. So if you bought and sold at the same day, or if you bought and sold at the trade, the total fees and commissions for one contract is going to cost you $1.32. If you bought two contracts, it will cost you $2.64 to double. And then 3 and 4, well, there. It's just times 3 and times 4 of what one contract will be. So those are the pros and cons. What does a call option move? What makes up its move, and what is it made out of? Well, a call has three values. One of them is intrinsic value, meaning that if it's deep in the money and the stock moves up by $1, the call option increases its value by $100 per contract. And then there's also a call has extrinsic value too, which is the value left based on the amount of time it has left from expiration of the option. For example, if you bought on November 11th a call option, strike price at $301 at an expiration date of the option to be on November 18, that's a difference. That's already 7 days from 11 to 18. That means that if the stock went up immediately tomorrow by $1 on November 12th, which is the next day of November 11th, it will be in the money and you made $100 per contract plus the amount of time left in the option, since there was 6 days, which in the general value could make option be worth $170 more because of the extrinsic value, which is called theta. So that's time value. Extrinsic value is also mixed in with time and volatility. What's the volatility in the extrinsic value? Well, it's implied volatility. This is more of the cyclical part of what makes the option value expensive or not. Volatility also factors its value in the contract. For example, if the option was in the money with a call at strike 301 and it went up by $1 in the stock, your option would be worth now $280, which is $110 more with IV, which is implied volatility. Why is that? Even though it went up by $1, now my option's worth more than $280. Because even though you had time left in the option, so this is all obviously this is when you have still time, as long as you have still theta left, the stock went up intrinsically $1, but the volatility percentage went up by 15%, which made your option contract more expensive than yesterday, because volatility is basically when it goes up, it means that there was more volume and more liquidity, meaning that there's more activity being traded today from buyers and sellers than yesterday. So that's what makes up the three values of an option. I'm telling you right now, there's people who have years of experience of calls and they don't even know this. That's why like you guys have to understand this, because when you understand this, it doesn't matter what other people tell you what an option will do. You know the facts. The facts are the facts, and you know what they will move. So let's talk about puts now. What's a put? Well, a put is now a contract similar to a call, but this contract benefits and increases in value when the stock goes down, as it's a contract between the buyer and seller to sell the stock at a certain price down until a defined expiration date. Now the buyer, now instead of here, you can see that the put options, instead of you buying the stock at a certain price, now you're selling the stock at a certain price. So the buyer of a put has the right or option, not the obligation, similar to buying a call, to sell 100 shares of the stock if it's been exercised or assigned, and this is the same case. This only happens if you let the option expire in the money. However, for the seller, if you're the seller of a call option, you have the obligation, not the right, to sell 100 shares of the stock if it's been exercised, which again only happens if you let the option expire worthless. Now, here's the similar example of what I said to the call options. Let's say if the put you bought was out of the money and it expired in the money, you keep the premium in from the price expired compared to when you bought it at, as the broker will assign you to sell 100 shares at the price of the strike price. So obviously, if the strike is in the money, that means the spot price is below the strike, which lets you sell Google at $120 strike price when it's now at $110. So you're selling it higher than the share price right now, while also gaining that increase in option itself as it went down by $10 in the stock. The option goes up by $1,000, like if you're selling or shorting 100 shares of course, with one contract. Not only is the price lower now than what you sold it for, because the broker let you sell those 100 shares at a higher price than what the stock is at now, that you got to sell at $12,000 when now it would be at $11,000, which is good because you're making a profit there of $1,000. Remember, you're shorting. You want the price to go down in order to buy it lower. So you're able to be selling $1,000 more expensive than the share price, and that person will definitely buy that price because they're obligated. And you also still benefit from that $10 increase from going down an option. While holding the option, it paid you that drop of $10 to pay you $1,000. With just paying $60 instead of buying the stock, which would have cost you $12,000. Now, what's the max you can lose in an option with put options? It's the exact same as call options. You lose based on the amount of premium you pay. That's all. I mean, I can go through this. You guys, I mean, if you buy Microsoft at $60, the max you can lose is $60. Even if the stock went up by 30%, it went up to the moon, you would still lose $60 no matter what happens to the stock. Now, what makes up a put option? Well, a put option is made up by three values, very exactly like a call option. It's made up by intrinsic value and extrinsic value, which has time value and volatility value. So again, intrinsic value means that if it's deep in the money and the stock moves down by $1, the put option increases its value by $100 per contract. A put has extrinsic value, which is the value left based on the amount of time it has left from expiration of the option. For example, if you bought on November 11th a put option, strike at $301 at an expiration date of the option to be November 18th, 7 days ahead. That means if the stock went down immediately tomorrow by $1 on November 12th, in the money, you made $100 per contract plus the amount of time left in the option, since there were 6 days left, which in general value could make the option be worth $170 more because of the intrinsic value left on the option. Now, implied volatility is the exact same thing as the call. Implied volatility is the volatility that makes the cyclical price on the contract. So if the implied volatility went up by 15%, your contract price would go up. Even if it stayed at the same price, you would lose a little bit by theta, but implied volatility will help you because it went up by volatility by 15%, and your contract would be more expensive than yesterday. Think about it. If you bought a contract, you want it to be more expensive because you want to sell it higher. And now it's vice versa if you're a seller. You don't want implied volatility to be low because it could go higher, and that could be risky because you don't want the price of your selling to be higher because they will buy it back at a higher price. So this is the same example. I mean, I could say through it again, but it's the exact same thing as the call options. Now, this is also very important, so you guys can view it. Okay, this is the P&L graph of the put option. As you see here, it's literally the exact opposite of the call. Instead, it's towards that side. Well, obviously, because if the price goes down, as you see in share price, what does the option do? It gains in value because you're doing puts. You benefit if the price goes down. So as you see here, it's just the exact same thing. It's literally the exact same thing, but in this case, it's the opposite. I put an example here on Google. If I put a strike price, it will put $321 and I bought it December 9th and it expires on December 16th, which is 7 days, and the spot price will be at 328. So if you see right here, I said my strike price would be at $321. Remember what I explained to you? This would cost me $100. And let's say that right here it's at $320. It's the same case, it's the same thing. Just because my price went down to $321 and $326 doesn't mean that I make money at expiration, because there's still that premium left. In order to break even, you need to add the strike price by, well, in this case, because it's a put, you actually need to minus it. You need to minus it by $321, subtract it by the premium, which is $100, would give you, in this case, because it's $1 and the option, it would be $321 minus $1 would give you $320, which is the break-even price. So we understand that, right? And of course, these green lines are the break-even price. As you see here, if the price today went down to $321, I would be making $200. Because sometimes you're not going to get exactly $500. Remember what I told you? The out-of-the-money calls are not intrinsic, don't have intrinsic value as much. They're very, very small. It only has extrinsic value, which is time value and implied volatility. So think about it. If your price went up in less time, what does that mean? Your price is closer to in the money or at in the money. And not only that, as your contract has gained value enormously. So in this case, as it's put, if the price went down to $5 on the same day, from costing $100, I would be making about $250, let's say. Like $250. So that looks like in between $500, which is good because that means you made 150% of your investment. And of course, if it went down to $10 to $316, you would be making about $750. So it's the same thing as calls, only that the opposite. And of course, you guys understand this purple line. This represents the current date today. This is the line of the expiration. Of course, as time goes on, what you're going to see though is that the purple line is going to get closer to the green line. Why? Because it's expiration. So that's the point of the time value. That by a few days later of what I'm looking now, this purple line, of course, is not going to be the same value. It's going to decay. It's going to be less. So instead of, remember what I told you, I'll make a profit $250. What's going to happen in 3 days later is that this P&L line is going to be closer to it. So let's say instead of this being, if the price went down in 3 days later to $321, now instead of not making $250, I made about $100 or $100. $100. This, whenever in the P&L it shows $250, it's saying $100 of profits. Remember that these are profits, right? Of course, if it went up to $100, that doesn't mean that you didn't make. That doesn't mean that you didn't make money. It means that you did make money, because remember that this is the profits. So if it goes up so if you see that you're making $100 here, you're actually making 100%. So I made a mistake there. If it's $250 here, that means you would be making 250%, because you're making $250 plus 100 out of the $100. So you're making here 1 to make 2, or similar to the stocks where you made 1 to make 2.5. You're making you're risking 1 to make 200%. So but as time goes on, this will probably be $100, not 250%. This will now be worth, in just 3 days later, you would make 100%. Of course, this is the risk of what I said. That's why it's risky when people don't know how to use it right. That if you don't know how to buy it right and you don't understand these things, that if you let the option go through a few days, so you think it will hit the price, and yeah, sure, it will hit the price, but you need to know that the strike price that it's in is losing value if you bought it at a closer expiration date. So you need to be aware of that, because the closer it is, the more the time, the more the profit and loss of today is going to decay in value per day because of time. There's going to be less time, which means it's going to reduce the current value it's at right now compared to tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be worth less. In 2 days, it's going to be worth much less than tomorrow, and in 3 days, it's going to be worth less than tomorrow and 2 days later. So it's the same thing. The green line here, you can see that's limited risk. Your max loss is going to be $100, or your buying power. And your infinite gain, so your buying power in single puts and in single calls is always going to be the the amount you put in. For certain strategies and option, it could be more than what your premium was. It could be some sort of collateral premium. It could be some sort of buying power because of a collateral of a broker. I'll explain that much more. That's a bit more advanced, but so you guys can understand that. But as you see here, if the price goes down completely, I have infinite gain on how far the price can go. Of course, the infinite gain, if the price went down to $0, of course I can't make more than $0. I can't make more if the price went down to, because the price can't go down to negative $10. So yeah, but when it goes up infinitely. But puts are still good for that. Yeah, because I mean, a 15% to 20% drop is good. Now, this is the same thing. I think you guys know this by now, that the purple line is representing today. The green line is representing the expiration date of the P&L and the P&L. And the y-axis is the amount of money your option can gain or lose wherever the share price can go. And the prices below the x-axis is the different share prices the stock can go. Now, finally, what are the pros and cons of puts? Well, it's the exact same thing on the pros and cons as the calls. It's literally it's the same. Why? Because the puts and calls are both contracts for the price to go down and up. Like if the price goes down, you have unlimited gain. If it goes against your trade, you have limited risk. But because of infinite gain, you can make as much as more than 100%. Even I've done 6 times, 10 times of my investment. Now, because of this, of course, your contract's going to cost less compared to buying 100 shares, because it's going to cost less. If the stock goes down to 7 to 9%, in stocks you would be losing $2,100 or $2,700 if the stock was costing $300, which would cost you in total $30,000. You would still lose regardless of $100 how far the price goes against your trade. Now, those were the pros. It was the same thing as the calls, and the cons are the exact same situation as the calls. It's the fact that we understand that options are made up by those 3 values, and because of that, they're sometimes risky to buy them if you don't utilize them correctly. That where if in the right scenario, in the right situation, where if you trade an expiration date for 3 weeks and the trade went up and not that much for 3 weeks and was just able to hit your strike price, and you will lose all the contract value because the time value really went against you, which is theta, in the trade, that the stock couldn't overpass the strike before the expiration or move up closer to the strike in a faster time for a few days before the expiration date. So in puts, you need the stock to go down sharply. Like that's how calls and puts work. You need it to move to a direction sharply to make a profit, to go down before a specific date to maintain that time value, and that the volatility doesn't go against you depending how much volatility there was when you bought it, which makes option prices expensive or cheap. And lastly are fees and commissions. So what's the aftermath? Of what I can give you in calls and puts? Just single calls, like buying calls and puts. Well, on both of them, you need the price to move sharply in order to fight off the theta that can hurt your trade if the price goes up, which is a call, or goes down as a put, as much before certain periods of times. So this is an executable strategy in options with single calls or single puts if you're very sure the price will go to that direction soon and sharply from your entire setup within the stock is telling you will move that direction with a high probability it will. Buying calls and puts are best executed when you have a high probability on explosive direction momentum in the stock will come through that I can easily make your trade 100% ROI or more in an easy move is done. So in summary, if you were going to buy a call or put, you need to understand that buying calls and puts are a sort of order that has time decay. It doesn't have beneficial time. When you sell calls, you have beneficial time because you as time goes on, you actually benefit from selling calls. But as time goes on, when you buy calls, you actually lose it. Why? Because the extrinsic value, when it doesn't hit your strike, loses it because there's no more time left. And because when there's no more time left, there's no more volatility left. So when that happens, you need to make sure that whatever you're going to trade in, that you need to make sure if you buy it for 3 weeks, that the stock has to move up significantly within a few weeks. So then, and you don't. So here's the thing. Let's say if you bought a strike price of $310 and the current price right now is selling at $300. That's a $10 difference at the strike, right? And let's say you bought that contract for a call option. Let's say that today the stock went up by $4 to $5. You would be making more than 100% of your investment. Why? Even though your price didn't get to your strike price, but because your price went up and it still maintained extrinsic value, especially in the same day, you would easily make 100% ROI even if it didn't hit your strike price. However, because of this, if your call option doesn't hit your strike price in in before your expiration date is due, then you would lose the trade because your extrinsic value is gone, and there is no intrinsic value because the strike price isn't below. The strike price is not in the money. So because of this, you need to make sure that whatever you're trading in, you has to have explosive direction momentum, meaning that, for example, if let's say the classic one thing that I do recommend for a lot of you, which I've said again, is that in options, what I'm going to be trading a lot of the times is very similar to stocks. You know, one is the R strategy. We see that when there's a reversal in the 50 trend and an uptrend, what's going to happen? Likely to go up rather than to go down. So because of that, because of high probability, you know, when you have your whole entire setup saying it's bullish, well, that's a very bullish direction momentum. And I would enter, depending on scenarios, I wouldn't enter completely on that. I would enter an expiration date much more longer, which I'll talk about, in order to benefit and that theta won't go against me so well. However, there are certain breakouts that I can do in hourly that are very explosive in momentum that I can benefit with the price moving up, that it doesn't even have to hit the strike price because it went up so much, let's say by intrinsically, that the extrinsic value maintained itself to go up. So that's why when you see calls out of the money to be worth less, when the stock goes up significantly, those contracts that costed $20, $30, $40 or $80 are going to be worth $200 to $300 at the strike, when the strike costs $200 or so. So that's the aftermath of calls and puts. In the next video, we'll talk about now the opposing party, which is selling those calls and puts. So this is very similar of what goes on in options every single day. There's only two people in options, and maybe a few other people like market makers, but there's only really two people. One is the broker, of course, but two is, one of them is the buyer and the other one's the seller. Let's say that these are puts. So this guy thinks so this guy is looking to buy a put option, and this guy is looking to sell a put option. And this is what each of them have in mind of each other and why they're deciding to either buy or sell. In this case, he's going to buy. He's thinking this guy is backwards. He thinks the market will continue to go up after this drop. I don't think so. Let me buy put from the price he's selling it for so I can take advantage of the drop. And then this guy who's selling him that contract or that strike price is saying, haha, this guy thinks the market will continue to go down even though we're in an uptrend. Let's sell him a put at a lower strike from now, out of the money, so there's a less probability it can get to the in the money. That way his put loses almost all of its value when it goes up, and I will keep the premium he paid me. So you guys will be like, huh, very interesting. Well, I'll talk about that more in depth in the next video. But again, I'd recommend to, I've said a few times that you should, note down a lot of the things that we're showing here because, I go really in depth into this and I show everything sort of as much as I can. And to understand it, really, you need to note down. Okay, so I'll see you guys in the next video when we're talking about selling calls and puts.